Hi there, this is my channel, Yaru Walks. In the year 2024, I will embark on an epic walking journey across the United States. I plan to hike 8,000 miles and to cross the U.S. 3 times, via the Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest Trail, and Continental Divide Trail. In the hiking world, this is known as a calendar year Triple Crown and has been completed by only a handful of hikers in history. The calendar year Triple Crown has traditionally been completed by jumping within or between the trails throughout the year, primarily to avoid snow, but also to avoid other seasonal hazards such as floods, extreme desert heat, and wildfires. For my attempt, I'm trying to hike each trail on a continuous, unbroken, end-to-end footpath, and to accomplish this, I must hike across all 4 seasons. I will be posting weekly updates along the way, so you can join me for the journey. Wish me luck.
I don't know for sure if I'm going to be able to get that down there. Oops. Yeah, this is a pretty big throat, but it may not be big enough. Maybe. It's better. Oh, isn't that a little?
Yeah, there are actually
That's not a mouthful, though.
they actually both are. There's one there and one there, but
okay, yeah.
that's the most critical one.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there have been other attacks also in Washington. So
really?
all 3 of those holes chewed out of the bag occurred in the last
geez.
3 weeks in Washington.
Man.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, we used to get, we have a rattlesnake now that's taking care of the mice for us, but man, we get them, once or twice a day. I had one living in the closet.
Yeah.
Under the dryer, and really annoying. But we have a stump, so we would kill them, and then take them and put them on a stump, and then watch the ravens come and get them.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool, actually. Okay, yeah,
That's perfect.
that'll work. Okay, now.
So I'll add commentary while I'm filming, but the blue is waterproof fabric.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the hole is where the mouse chewed.
Right.
Do you know what the fabric is? The waterproof fabric?
I don't know, actually. I should, but...
But yeah,
it's not ripstop, because that's thin.
Yeah.
This is kind of a ripstop, so it's a little heavier than that. Okay. Try to get it flat if I can. And I created one for our new library where all the quilts, I didn't make them all, but we did it as a fundraiser, and we made $8,100.
For the library locally?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a beautiful library. It's like wins awards and stuff. Went through the library, but yes, but every quilt had to be themed with books. Something to do with books. So I did one, the color purple. It was a purple quilt, and then I did one for Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
And I did one that was Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I bet that was a popular one.
Yeah, it was cool. It was her with her, she always wore a lace thing when she was a judge.
Mm-hmm.
And it said, never underestimate a girl with a book.
Yeah.
And yes, and it had a bunch of books on it. So yeah, it was fun. Okay. Yeah, and I'm working on another show for town where the quilts will be up on the boardwalk. And I don't think we're going to have themes so much for this one, but at any rate.
What is, can you kind of like what is a quilt? I know that it's like you have like a blanket, and then it's like I'm imagining you patch squares on that have different designs and stuff, or is it different from that?
Yeah, it can be a lot of things, but the main thing is it's got to have a top, a bottom, and a backing, they call it. And then inside it's got to have some sort of batting, like that is a batting.
Okay.
That's a roll of batting. And
that's like the structure to the...
That's inside, yeah. And then, of course, there's this... that is a table runner. And I started doing life quilts, which are part parts of my life. So the first one I did is that blended fluid stuff. It's regarding, I'll get it real quick.
Yeah.
Diethylstilbestrol is a drug they gave women to prevent miscarriages and also to fatten up chickens.
Wow.
And
did you say that was one of the first ones you've done?
No, it's
this
the
looks
first
like
of a
it's super
quilt.
advanced. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, like this is a DNA thing, DES, diethylstilbestrol.
Yeah.
Because the offspring of the women, my mother was had a lot of miscarriages, so she took this drug, and and it was supposed to be for chickens to fatten them up, but the offspring a lot of them can't have children.
Oh, okay.
Result.
Yeah.
And a lot of them had cancer. I mean, it's just a
so it was like,
thing
gotcha.
to do to kids,
Yeah.
to mothers and their offspring. So anyway, I'm a DES daughter. So that's one of them. And I've done a lot. I have another one upstairs that's called the Metal Migration, and it's flowers from here and also from Alaska, and with 3 geese. And the idea is the Metal Migration is when we moved down from Alaska.
Like you and Happy Hog?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so those are kind of fun to do. And then, traditionally there's zillions of patterns. And they have names like Ohio Star and Railroad. And so it's a tradition, it's an old thing. I mean, they did quilting in Europe too. But anyway, so it just changed. It's changed a lot for me from traditional to more arty quilt things, But anyway,
It's so cool. I love the patterns on the fabrics you picked out for this.
Thanks, yeah.
Did you add these little like stitches on?
Yeah, that's called free motion quilting. And so you drop what they call feed dogs, which are what guide your fabric. And you drop those so that you can turn the fabric any way you want it and make any design you want.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fun. So otherwise they're just kind of straight stitches.
Yep.
It's a little funner than this
Oh yeah, you got a sore throat 2 or 3 times. It's like, you're getting your tongue.
I'm so tempted to make my dream of hobo train travel come true tonight. So this is pretty sweet. I'm on an Amtrak train that runs from Wenatchee. I took 3 different buses today. And they took me to Wenatchee. I'm going over a river right now. Look at that. I don't know if you could see that or not. You can mostly just see me filming myself in the window, but that's a river out there. Maybe if I switch, there you go. And I was listening to the audiobook of another guy who hiked a Counter Year Triple Crown, and his train broke down en route from Washington to Montana, and he ended up spending 20 hours on the train, and he said it was a mistake to not get the sleeper car. So I ended up opting for the sleeper car. So these 2 seats roll out into a bed, and there's another bed above me, so it actually fits 2 people. So instead of sitting in just a seat all night, I actually get to sprawl out like this and turn it into a bed, which is going to be awesome since I think, starting the CDT tomorrow. Yeah, what was your name again, though?
Paul.
Paul, nice. And so your official title is that you're a conductor of the Amtrak train?
Yeah, I'm a conductor with Amtrak based out of Seattle.
Yeah.
So I used to be extra board, so I work whatever jobs we had open. Now I work with conductor on this job. We go to Spokane twice a week. We have a schedule, which is amazing.
And so, like, occasionally I feel like you've had to, like, write down updates, like, in your notebook there. Like, it seems meticulous. Like, what is that exactly?
We all have our fun little ways of keeping track of exactly where we are.
Okay.
Which is most of what I do. And so I have my fun little
Mhm.
cheat sheet here. It just tells me all my points. It's sort of being a backseat driver and navigating from the back with the use of clever little waypoints that we know, or auditory assists, if you will, like detectors going down the road reminds us. Every little thing we can use to remember exactly to the mile
Yeah.
where we are.
And so, as a conductor, I guess I imagine that you're keeping tabs on like all the people getting on and off the train. But
Part of it.
it's like part of it. But that's all I was aware of, because as a passenger, that's all you ever like
As
see,
a passenger,
right?
we're the ticket takers.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
all I thought that conductors did. But you're explaining, like, because you worked for another railway that was more of like a freighter, right? And so you guys are also responsible for like connecting the trains and taking them apart, and you know all sorts of other logistics, right?
The easiest way it was described to me when I was, or that was described to somebody else when I was a really young brakeman, was there are three basic roles as far as the operating crew on board. Our engineer is the chauffeur, backwards and forwards. The conductor is the manager and the clerk, and the brakeman is the laborer. When there is no brakeman, the conductor will assume those duties as well. But anytime you're doing anything on the ground, it's usually the conductor and the brakeman. Lighting switches, connecting cars, setting cars out, connecting air hoses, air testing cars, making the plan for what goes where, what time we're going to go here and there. And but we don't do anything without all of us being in agreement. We prefer having a brakeman on the crew because the brakeman has the least on his mind, so it's an unfiltered vantage point. He can see more, he can hear more. Has less tunnel vision than the conductor or the engineer will have. So a brakeman is very useful to get out of that tunnel vision, big picture kind of guy. On this job tonight, I am a conductor. The guy I'm working with is a conductor. I'm called as the assistant conductor on this job. So the brakeman in normal railroad parlance. Most of our job is to know exactly where we are and what comes up next. We're the backseat drivers, knowing what speed we're going, what speed we should be going next. The next piece of work we have, the next...
So if you're off schedule a little bit, you would then be talking to the engineer to let him know, or like
More so, we'd be briefing with the engineer regarding unusual speed restrictions coming up, or something different we might want to do in an upcoming location that's different from the norm.
But mostly, he's probably just on a line doing his job, and you know, like you're double checking, but it's mostly good.
It's just constant communication between us, so it's keeping all three of us on the same page.
And so then, to talk to him, do you have to go like talk to him through the door, or do you? Oh, radio.
Yep,
Gotcha.
right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
But in the time we've been sitting here, which is maybe like 20, 30 minutes, you know, it's just been radio silence, like all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That means no unusual speed restrictions coming up, nothing unusual going on.
Yeah.
At our Afreda stop, I gave a hand signal to Matt with my light to let him know that I was done with my work at that station. So he didn't have to worry about me or my door anymore. He gave a radio communication to the engineer telling him to go, essentially.
So interesting. I feel like being a train engineer or a train conductor job is just like one of those jobs that is so fundamentally interesting. You know, I feel like it's like it appears in movies a lot.
And
you know,
it's very much in the dark. You don't really, there's a lot of lenses on what a pilot does.
Yeah.
It's inherently interesting. Most of what we do is pretty much in the dark, and it is archaic. There are a lot of practices that what's not broken you don't need to fix.
Yeah.
We have a language with our lantern signals.
Yeah. And that's a lantern. I was actually going to ask.
This is a modern day lantern and flashlight mode or all around mode.
Yeah.
We can have a whole conversation with hand signals and know exactly what we're talking about.
Wow. Yeah.
And I try to do as much by hand signals as possible.
Yeah.
Because when you talk on a radio, there's a lot to be potentially interpreted, or you could have a bad handset, a bad receiver, you could miss something. With hand signals, I know that you instantaneously saw everything I wanted to convey.
Yeah.
And it's very black.
What would be like a routine hand signal? Like if you just get off the stop there, like something you would convey to the engineer?
Well, in Spokane tonight, we're going to be using, Spokane, the way we back up onto the next train set in Spokane doesn't really allow for hand signals because of the curvature of the track. The engineer can't see me. But I would prefer to do it by hand signs in Spokane. Had I been doing it by hand signs in Spokane, my very simple conversation would be get his attention with my light out and give him a big circle that start backing up. And if I don't give him a car count with that, then he's going to back up, assuming we're backing up at least 5 more cars. When we get to about 5 cars away, I'm going to give him an easy, which is another circle.
Okay.
And then I'm going to start giving him car counts, 1, 2, 3, and proceed like that. When we get to our last car, I'm going to give him little circles.
Yep.
And then I'm going to slow it down as I get to the top, and he's going to know exactly where I want him to stop, which is going to be right here, and I'll give him a stop.
Whoa. Yeah.
Just like that.
Yeah.
And then when I get out, I'm going to give him an in-between.
Okay.
And that shows that I'm working between the equipment in the crush zone, you could say. And although technically by Amtrak, I have to do that part by the radio. I used to be able to do this at freight. At freight, he would acknowledge me with a single whistle blast when he has what's called a reverser centered. So no matter what he does with the throttle, it won't go backwards or forwards. And when he's got a certain amount of air pressure built up on the brakes, and that air is equalized, so I know the train set's not moving. And at Amtrak, since we have hotel power, he's shutting down the head end power, so there's no more electrical circuit going between the cars. And then when I get out, I tell him I'm out by radio. And little things like that, because it's only backwards and forwards, so there's really not a lot that I need to convey.
Right.
But that's at the very simplest. That's what I could tell them.
So then, on a freight train, because you worked on freight before doing passenger, tracks or trains, would the connecting or braking cars be more complicated, and then would your hand signals be different?
My hand signals here are actually pretty much the same that they were over there.
Okay.
It's still just the backwards and forwards. In fact, there are way fewer hand signals that I can use here because there are things here that I am not allowed to do that I was encouraged to do there because it was best practice, but it's not best practice with passenger equipment. There were some pretty fun switching operations I could do that I cannot do with passenger cars. It's actually gotten a lot simpler.
Okay, yeah.
However, the equipment at freight was a lot simpler to work with. We had one air hose going between the cars, and the knuckle to actually connect them together, plus the air hose, and that's really it. You just have one train line connecting all the brakes. A passenger.
What does the air hose do?
Every single car has its own. In freight, every single car has one brake cylinder.
Oh, okay.
To set up the brakes on a single truck consisting of 2 axles. So half of the car has brakes being applied, and that air pressure is maintained by a compressor in the locomotive.
So you have to lock the train cars together and then connect the air hose.
And then lace the air hoses together.
Yeah. And then if they slam on the brakes because there's something ahead, does that lock up the wheels on every single train line behind? Okay.
But it does take time to get back there because all of the brake cylinders in the receiving cars are reacting to a decrease in air pressure coming from the front. So on this train, it's a pretty imperceptible difference because it's so short. On a long 120 car freight train, if you applied an emergency brake application from the head end of the train only, it'll be as many as 10 seconds before it reaches the rear, before the rear car starts setting up.
And then, obviously the brake time depends upon how many cars there are and how much weight there is in each car, but
makes a huge difference.
How ballpark range, can you stop a train in 10 seconds or is it minutes? I would imagine it's minutes, but I don't know.
I figure this train is only 7 cars plus a locomotive.
Yeah.
On this train set, from 79 miles an hour to stopped on level ground.
Yep.
Because that's another big variable. On level ground, dry rail.
Yep.
Probably get to a stop within 3 or 4 train lengths. So that's
quick.
Probably within 1,000 to 2,000 feet we should be stopped, which is super quick.
And then, like, do they actually ever slam it? Like, let's say, like, a car is crossing the roads or
We
something.
have close calls all the time.
But then to stop that quickly would probably jolt the passengers pretty hard, right?
A little bit, but not as bad as you think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
If you were coming down the stairs and weren't grabbing onto anything, yeah, you'd fall over.
Okay.
If you
Yeah.
were standing in a big open space, you could fall over, but you could steady yourself.
You would quickly feel, oh, a thing happened, but, it's not like
You would say to yourself,
Yeah.
that was a little bit quicker than usual. That was moderate.
That didn't sound good. Yeah, but it's okay. Yeah. But
But
then not,
you wouldn't, most people probably wouldn't perceive that it was an emergency application of a brake system.
so then on a freight train, though, I feel like I've just seen videos where, like, it just keeps going and going, like the rack. Yeah, that's what they call it. It's like a train wreck because it's such a slow thing.
I can speak to an emergency application that one of many that I had on 110 cars going 52 miles per hour, but all of our cars were empty.
Okay.
110 empty cars, 3 locomotives, and braking applied from either end of the train. Because on freight trains, we have a way to engage the emergency brakes from either end of the train and work inwards. And we got stopped in about 1,500 to 2,000 feet from 52 miles an hour, which was lightning fast for a freight train.
Yeah. And that's
about
empty
as-
cars.
That's
Yeah.
empty cars. It would have been about a train length, so it would have, had we been loaded, it would have been more like, probably would have been more like 5,000 feet
Yeah.
to a stop. So wait,
So you're talking like a quarter of a mile to almost a mile to stop a freight train. Yeah.
minimum
So
quarter.
basically, I mean, like your line of sight on any situation can't be much more than about half a mile or a mile.
Well, in this situation, our line of sight was about 300 feet around. the
Right.
corner.
So it's just like you can lessen the time to arrival to enable whatever it is to get out of the way, but it's got to see you get out of the way, basically, right? 'Cause otherwise, you're just going to hit whatever's going to be there.
By the time we engage emergency braking, if we decide that it's necessary to engage emergency braking, it's already, if you're not already actively moving out of the way, it's not going to buy you any time,
Yeah.
realistically.
Yeah.
I've seen it buy people enough time, maybe twice. It made a difference. But that was on, we were already going less than 50 miles per hour on a passenger train with a clear line of sight, level grade, no curves.
How often does a passenger train like get into like a wreck with like a car? Is that
Does it hit a car?
Yeah, is that a common occurrence?
I'd say it's common. I have no idea, like, because every region's so different. I always hear,
Like on this line, does that happen once a year or something? Like on this actual train?
oh, way
Yeah.
more often.
More often than that.
Way
Okay.
more often.
Yeah.
I couldn't speak to the frequency exactly on average. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But it's more common.
Interesting.
It's not uncommon.
Yeah.
It's not an everyday occurrence, but it's not surprising.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean that actually makes sense, but yeah. What this is just like such a broad question, it may not even be useful, but like what is like the, like if someone asked me as a hiker, like what's the craziest experience you've had hiking, like a couple of things would come to mind. Like is there, like just being a train conductor in all of your career, has there been any kind of like wild night, or just experience that kind of sticks out as just kind of more interesting? Like, yeah, what would that be?
Oh yeah.
Or what are the categories? Or if there's just one,
I'll defer to my experiences with my previous
Yeah.
employer. I have been in the cab of a freight train on a runaway.
a runaway train.
real
Yeah.
runaway, you could say. I have had incredible instances where people and vehicles we hit lived, and the only reason why they lived is because of a random fluke that had nothing to do with them that happened with our train 2 miles before we hit them, that bought them enough time to leave their car that they did not know about.
Yeah.
But I'll speak to the runaway.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
We were westbound out of what you would know as East Glacier Park, climbing up to the Continental Divide at Marias Pass. It was the middle of the night in the winter, and it had snowed a lot. And we had 2 main tracks open, mains 1 and 2. Main 1 was the northerly westbound track, and that had been plowed out. Main 2 had not been plowed out. We were routed down Main 2, the track that had not been plowed out. It had at least, it probably had 6 inches to a foot of fresh snow on top of the rail. And we were a short but heavy, we would call it a short fat, we call it an H train. Just all sorts of, just a mixed freight consist, all sorts of grain and gaseous substances and all sorts of fun things. And most of our cars were loaded, so we were quite heavy. And we crested Marias Pass. And when you go downhill on the westward side of the pass, it's a descending 2.1% grade, which is very steep for a train. And the first mile of that, we're required to maintain 15 miles per hour to ascertain if we can hold the train with our air brakes. And if we can't, then our procedure is to throw the air brakes into emergency, get it stopped, and figure out a new plan. And my engineer and I, he was a good friend, we both knew this route like the back of our hand, and I felt a little slip, and Doug felt a little slip, and my hand went up to the emergency brake handle, and Doug's hand went up to the emergency brake handle, and Doug looked at me and said, "Saddle up, Paul, we're going to the rodeo." And we both, it's called dumping the air when you throw your train into emergency. We did that at the same time from either side of the cab, threw our train into emergency. And so we had all the brakes locked up on probably 76 cars or so. And we slid for 2 miles in emergency, brakes locked up. You've done all you can at that point.
Yeah.
Rode for 2 miles, downgrade, brakes locked up, and it's just gaining speed. And we knew where all the curves were and the tricky spots. And so I made my standard issue radio broadcast when you dump the air, emergency, VNSF 4662 West. It was an emergency, I'm outpost 1172.1. Dispatcher calls up, yeah, westbound H. Say you're stopped in emergency. I said, well, I'm in emergency, I'm not stopped. I'll give you the details on that as they develop. I got up, put my orange coat on, got my radio on, sat back down, looked at the speedo again, and Doug looked at me and said, "You out of here, Paul?" I said, 32. That's my limit, 32. He said, "Yeah, that's a good number. Hold the door open for me on your way out. Jump off into a snowdrift at 32. You'll live." But there was a curve.
To be clear, you're saying if the speed limit of the train exceeded 32, you were prepared to jump off of the train?
Yeah, I was gone. Yeah, I'm not riding that out.
Okay.
No.
And is it snowy out, or you just be jumping into rocks? Or like...
Oh, no, there was tons of snow.
Okay.
No, if it was rocks, different story.
Yeah.
Tons of snow on the ground. 32, that was my limit. And
is that like a guidance limit, or is that
no,
you just know what 32
that's
looks like?
just my own judgment.
I feel like I'd have a lower number.
In that area, I knew about, you know the curves well enough, you know where they're coming up, you know where this curve comes off into a bridge over the two Medicine River, or on that side of that fork of the Flathead.
Were you in a canyon when this was happening?
Yeah.
Because now I'm imagining, okay, you hop off at 32, but let's say at 40, it pops off the rail. You got to worry about that train car. I'm imagining derailing.
Yeah, you want to be gone before it goes on the ground.
You want to be widely, like, as soon as you hit the ground, you want to get up and run away.
You want the train to go on the ground a mile past where you jump off.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You know the line so well, you can hop off before where it would derail, and you could just sit there at that point.
Because if it starts to go on the ground, you stay up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you get crushed.
Yeah.
So, it crept up, and it's teetering. Oh, that's 32. Bye, Doug. Whoa, I think it's setting down, Paul. And yeah, right at 32, it started to set down. Right in the nick of time. Perfect spot. That was that was my most fun night.
Dude, I'm nervous with you right now. That's such a good story.
That was my most fun night.
Yeah.
But from there, the work as a conductor, if you don't have a brakeman, if you're the conductor by yourself, that's where the work begins.
Yeah.
You're on a mountain, so there's all sorts of things you got to do. You got to jump up and secure. I think that night it must have been 36 handbrakes. Climb up a ladder, spin a wheel, manually secure 36 handbrakes. There's a little valve on the side of a freight car called a retaining valve. With a long story, but the short end is you got to turn that little valve on however every single car in your train. And the snow is so deep that I'm swimming between the cars. So this is an hours long process. You know, there's 17-foot snow drifts in your sweat.
It's also wild because you're in this contained train environment, you know what I mean, where it's probably got a heater and stuff, and then you're out like in the mountains wherever, because you're not expecting to be there at that moment.
Your environment changes.
It's kind of surreal to be like, oh, at one moment I'm on the train, and the next moment I'm like now in a mountainous environment.
Yeah,
you know, you were always in it. You just were so buffered from it.
It's where your engineer's workday ends and your workday begins.
Yeah.
Because engineer is just sitting in the cab doing what you tell him to do, which for that process is nothing.
Yeah.
Keep it in emergency. Keep the train secure. You're in between tying handbrakes and setting retainers. It's going to be a while. Engineer's time to get out a sandwich.
Yeah.
All he's got to do is sit there and babysit in the nice, luxurious, comparatively heated cab. And so that's about 3 hours all said and done. By now, our relief crew has arrived. We can only work up to 12 hours. Our relief crew has arrived just as I finished tying the train down, setting retainers. And now they're going to have to undo all the handbrakes once the air charges up to get it going again. Slowly. And they arrived, there was no road. They arrived on the snowplow train consist that had plowed out the adjacent main track that we mysteriously were not routed on. And so we rode the snow shovel train to Essex, which is the stop before the one you're getting off. We rode the snowplow train to Essex, which was the slowest trip ever. And we got in a crew van and went home. We went into emergency at probably close to midnight, and by the time I got home, the sun was high up in the sky.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a long day.
Yeah.
I think I was 16 hours on duty that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. The experience was fun, and then afterwards, it just sucks.
Yeah.
But I did get a great picture of that.
That's such a good story. Thanks for sharing that.
That was a fun night.
And then last question, when we were first chatting, you were telling me about your just most recent hiking trip out to, I forget the name of it, but it's the...
Nunavut.
Yeah, and rather than me to share your motivation, but there was a particular thing you wanted to go see. Could you kind of explain, like, I guess what that was and how you got there? It was a pretty good story, I thought.
I don't know where I saw a picture of Thor Peak, which is the world's highest vertical cliff face. Thor Peak is toward the southern end of Ayuituk National Park on the southeast corner of Baffin Island, which is a lot of the landmass of the territory of Nunavut. I thought it'd be a terrific idea to plan a trip around Thor Peak. So we flew into the capital of Nunavut, Iqaluit.
And Thor Peak is the largest cliff face in the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we had 5 days to supply in the capital. Caught a plane up to a hamlet called Penmeerton and chartered a boat with a guy named Peter. Peter's the only guy with a boat who's allowed to take people into the park.
And it's a fishing boat.
Peter has a little, probably 22-foot narrow aluminum fishing boat. And we met up with Peter at 6 o'clock in the morning before the sun came out, hanging your tongue at the dock. And Peter drove us 12 nautical miles up the fjord to a rock, and we backpacked in about a day and a half. Walked over the Arctic Circle across that line. And then we set up camp within view of Thor Peak, the world's highest vertical cliff face. It looked like a Dr. Seuss mountain. It kind of bends over this terrific relief over the valley in Iuituk. I forget the name of the pass, but you could see Thor Peak for days in any direction. Spent a very cold night out there. Hightailed it out of there the next day. Made it back for a 7-ish p.m. boat ride. Peter was about 4 hours late, but that's fine. They picked us up about 7:30 back to hang near Tongan. We ate a fish.
Awesome.
That was a rad time.
That's an awesome trip. I thought of one more question.
That's
if
what
you're
I do
okay.
on my sick days.
Yeah. I mean, that's just such an inventive trip. That's inspirational that your like imagination took you that far to go to like above the Arctic Circle on a like remote like kind of like island area.
Railroad operating crews, we have a lot of time to sit and think about where we want to go next.
Yeah, I mean it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah, we get a lot. The only thing is we have to be really creative, because we can't have fun with Google Maps on our phones, because that would be use of a personal electronic device, and for that we would go to jail if we're on duty.
Oh yeah, because you got to be so on point with all these notes, which I'm so impressed with your ability to multitask. Even if I weren't here, that seems like a lot to keep up with.
Oh, it's after a while, it's on the back of your mind.
That makes sense.
You could do this in your sleep after a while. I tell myself, and I'm pretty sure I do. I think I have the easiest job I've ever had since I was a bag boy at Publix grocery store.
But there's a lot of, I think, experience and skill that goes into making it that second nature.
I have 3,000 pages of rule book memorized like the back of my hand, and once you get to that point, you never have to really think it.
Yeah.
You don't have a...
It's just kind of hard getting to that point,
At
though,
that point, yeah, after the first few years, you go, once you have everything memorized, like, oh, this happened? Yeah, I know how to fix that. That's fine. That's fine. Oh, this doesn't matter. It's fine. Oh, I know how to fix that. That's fine. That's fine.
So you were saying
Nothing's a big deal.
before you worked on, I don't know, I'm going to say like on trains or with trains, you worked at the Hostel in East Glacier. Like, is there like a favorite memory from working there?
In East Glacier Park, we were really the only hostel anywhere on the east side of that entire park, let alone in the town of East Glacier Park.
What was that hostel called again?
Brownies.
Yeah.
Linda Chase owned it at the time, and her stepson still owns it. He bought it from her, and we call it the Brownies. And
it's a CDT hostel, but you said also a trans like USA biking hostel.
Yeah, the CDT hikers northbound and southbound would all come through as either their first or their last stop. It was their first or their last showers. They were thrilled to see. It was their first or their last beer.
Yeah.
It was a sort of midway point for a lot of the cyclists going between Maine and Washington State. It was such a fun gathering point. Those of us who lived and worked there, we knew all the best bonfire spots. We knew all the best locals trails and mountains that they didn't advertise where the tourists wouldn't go. It was the east side of the national park is the Blackfeet Indian Reservation, so it's not nearly as built up or advertised as the west half. And so if you found yourself there, you had done some work to find it. And you were not a lazy type. You had really earned your ability to be in that area. And the personality types that attracted were just all over the place, from Russia, Eastern Europe, island Asian nations. It was the United Nations of the hippie type. It was a great. It was the most international setting I've ever been, and I live in Seattle now.
Yeah.
And what a gathering spot. is to sit on the deck with whatever
So basically,
beverages you
yeah,
required.
every night out or every night there, I would imagine would just be, if you wanted to participate, pretty interesting conversations and people.
Endless.
Yeah.
Endless. You had to.
And people with such good stories too.
You had to
Yeah.
check yourself and remind yourself that, maybe I'm at the end of my social rope. You had to try not to be sociable because you wanted to be.
Yeah.
Every single night you wanted to be. And what a great town, great location.
And that's kind of how you fell in love with Montana, was being there.
And it's the only place, it's the only geographic location I'll ever love.
Yeah.
Ever. No, ever. I'll never love another place again.
Yeah.
Not like that.
You describing it the way that you did reminds me of a kind of like impromptu motorcycle trip that I did through northern Vietnam, where I learned how to ride the motorcycle from the hostel that rented
While
it to
you
you
were on the
for
trip,
$5. And so then you take this 300-kilometer ride called the QC Loop, where you go along the border of China and Vietnam, and then you can stay in these places that are called nanis, which are like homestays. And so you stay with people in their actual homes, right? And then like they'll serve you dinner, and it was like usually vegetarian, and you would sit down on these bamboo mats, but sometimes they would like actually like slaughter a chicken if there was chicken there that night. But then you would just be joined together at this table with people from all over the world, and it's just like you said, it's a self-selecting bunch. I remember remarking on like the fifth night, the last night, where I'd finished the loop and I'm back at the hostel that I started from, and half the people at the table are about to start their journey and half are finishing. And I was just saying, like, it's rare in life that you come across a place that's so hard to get to and takes such a special person to be interested, and then you all get to be there, almost by accident for a moment that night, but everyone who's there should be there almost, right? And like, it's just such a fun environment. And like the way you describe that hostel in East Glacier sounds just like one of those special little vortex spots. But you got to be there every night at the table, which is like, that's something you can't put a dollar value on.
To live it and to get to be, for a little blip in time, this unofficial ambassador to this place you just absolutely fell in love with.
Yeah.
And especially as a kid, what a feeling,
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
It was I think what got me to try out living there for a summer was when I was even a younger kid, when I was 14. We came through Essex, Montana on a trip, my mother and I, and the bartender at the one hotel in Essex was from Spokane, Washington, probably in his 60s, guy from Spokane, straight edge, didn't expect much creativity from him. And he started describing why he kept coming back to spend his summers in his retirement working there as the bartender. And a guy who you wouldn't expect this to happen from, his eyes just lit up. And he said, for however much time I spend on the borders of this park in this region, I don't grow a day older. And he was just the happiest guy. Maybe it's because he was away from his wife for the season. I don't know. But he just had an unexpected passion for a place that you don't expect to see. And so, for being a sophomore in high school, I think, what the hell do I want to do with my summer? I remembered this guy, and I said, I wonder if there's a way to live there. And I found a hostel that didn't care that I was 16. I said, yeah, you can live here, we don't care.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, great intro to a place.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that's a good place to end the little fun impromptu interview. Thank you so much for being willing to share your experiences on the trains and elsewhere in the world. Super, super cool to meet you / to chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, these have just been my experiences, but you never know who you're going to meet on the train, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Actually, now that I think about it, it's another little vortex spot.
It is.
Yeah.
These places, especially you'll get the lounge car in the morning.
Yeah.
Those places are meccas.
All right, so these are the train compartments. This is the upper bed where I slept last night. These two seats down here actually combine into a bed, but I just went up top to make it easier. And this is kind of the view out the window, which is kind of dusty,
but a pretty sweet way to wake up in the morning, just cruising through the mountains on a train. And then this train goes from Wenatchee, where I was picked up last night, at 9 p.m. and arrives in East Glacier at 9 a.m. So I just slept overnight, woke up at 8:30, and now I have 1 hour ride into East Glacier, as far as I know, if there aren't any delays that happened overnight. And if there were any delays, it's the perfect place to be, because you can literally like lie down up there or down here. But anyway, I just thought this part of the experience was kind of fun.